On this episode of Killer Genes, what happened to Susan Ledyard, a beloved school teacher who left her home at 3 a.m? It is a mind-boggling mystery. I talked to her 3 siblings and the detective about what they know so far and what needs to be done to solve this case.
She was an inspiration to me, and there wasn't anybody like her in our family.
Surveillance video we have it is at night and we don't see who's in the car.
Key piece of evidence in the mysterious murder out of Wilmington, Delaware comes from an unlikely source.
This is one of those things that I have a hard time with still, that her heart rate stopped at 7 a.m.
What happened to Susan Ledyard down by the river's edge? Hello, everyone. I'm Liz McCarty. I'm a national crime correspondent, and I've traveled the country for many years now, talking to loved ones of those killed and at times the convicted. This platform allows me to reach all of you and help highlight cases that need your attention and to cover stories my way. Thank you for being here. If you do get a second, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and join me here each week for cases told firsthand from those affected directly by the tragedies. Now, this story is unsolved. The details are truly mind-boggling. Some details will make you want to jump to an immediate conclusion, but it's never that simple for police. Also, it's never that simple for the loved ones involved. There is a slight secondary development in this case, and I will break all of that down, so stick with me. That's further towards the end. Meet 50-year-old Susan Morrissey Ledyard. She grew up in a close-knit family with 2 sisters, Missy and Meg, and a younger brother, John. Her siblings tell me they all got along and had a lovely upbringing, each sibling having their own different strength. Susan was the artistic one, very smart, and of course she was beautiful. She was known as the crafty one as well, who loved drawing. Susan always knew her life purpose was to teach. It was a common passion among the Morrissey family. In fact, this is interesting. 3 of the 4 kids ended up as teachers, and their parents weren't even educators. So how did all of this happen? It was just a passion that bonded the siblings. They all had it. They were all also very close growing up. Susan caught the teaching bug first and started right out of college. She was quickly recruited to teach English at a university in Prague. John, the youngest sibling, tells me that relocation to teach in Prague cemented her already independent spirit and her place as his idol. Her sisters describe what kind of teacher she was.
When I was 17 years old and she came back from Prague, she had been in Prague for about a year. And I mean, she was like, I couldn't believe that the coolest kid I knew all of a sudden was my sister. I think I was smoking the same brand cigarettes as her. I think my mannerisms had turned into hers a lot. I was laughing like her. I was using little silly buzzwords like killer, like that's killer.
I think she immediately decided to teach high school. She just felt drawn to that age group as opposed to teaching, say 1st or 2nd grade. And I think that's because of the way she related to the students and appreciated them at that age. But also she was then allowed to really dig as deep as she could into literature and language.
She cared so much about people, and not just people she knew, people in the world. She was more politically aware than anyone I knew of at such an early age. She loved animals. She became a vegetarian at age 8. She would not eat an animal. She was in a program saving the sea lions in San Francisco early on cold mornings on the weekend after teaching all week. She was a brilliant teacher. Her students miss her. They loved her. She had a way of reaching them that was just so special. And they had such fun with her, and she's just really, really cool, interesting person. She had so much depth.
Beyond her career, Susan would look for more in life, as one does, finding it with Ben Ledyard, a single father of two who had been a longtime family friend. Their love was immediate. The whirlwind romance we always hear about elevated quickly. Now, she moved to the town where he was from within about a year. She was in her 40s at the time, and at that age, I think you just tend to know what you want, and you certainly know at that point what you don't want. Ben was known to the family already, and the two had the luxury of perfect timing in life when they connected romantically. Ben, he had gone to grade school with Susan's older sister, Missy, so the Ledyards and the Morrisseys knew each other well. In the summer of 2019, the Morrissey family took what would be their last yearly vacation together. Her sister Missy tells me about those last moments.
Well, she's a teacher, and she was out for the summer, so she was definitely in her happy place. Sun, outdoor time, didn't have to get up so early, could stay up late. We were at the beach. My mother has a house in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, and Meg and her family come for 3 weeks every July. So we all try to spend as much time as we can down there during that 3 weeks. I would say Susan was down there for the majority of the 3 weeks. So she would have just come off of a wonderful vacation. She told a friend at school, a teacher, that if you wanted to know the real her, it was with her family in Stone Harbor. It was wonderful. So Susan came home Saturday, and then she died that Tuesday morning.
July 23rd, 2019, a Tuesday morning around 7:39 a.m., the body of Susan Ledyard is found in Brandywine River by a construction worker. Detective Daniel Grossi of the Delaware State Police headed up this investigation. Now, he told me the witness was just a worker in the area of the bridge near where she was found. It was closed for construction at the time, and he was one of the construction workers on site. Now, the man at that point called the Wilmington police saying that there was a body in the river. The witness also said that Susan was caught up on some kind of a tree limb or brush or some piece of debris in the water. He said if she hadn't been caught on that limb or the piece of debris, then she likely would have ended up in the Delaware Bay, which means that it would have been much harder to find her. Now, in talking to her sisters about that day, they recount the moment they received the heart-stopping call.
I mean, I can't put into words what that phone call was like. And then I called my sister Missy and told her, which was excruciating.
I remember thinking at the time that Susan must have had a car accident because I didn't have any facts at that time, and I just couldn't picture anything else. I could hardly picture that. And I don't remember exactly what I told my mother. She might remember better. I just remember sitting her down first and kneeling by her chair and taking her hand and telling her that Susan had had an accident and that she hadn't made it. And my mother just very quietly said, "Oh no, oh no, no, Missy."
Oh, it's just chilling to even hear her say that and recount that. So how did the popular local school teacher, loving sister and wife end up dead in a river? And even more puzzling was the fact that her vehicle was also found that morning approximately 3 miles away at an area called Walker's Mill. Detectives had to retrace Susan's movements the night before, and what they found was just more puzzling, more of a mystery. The detective told me they had her cell phone usage up to 50 minutes before the car backed out of the driveway at her home. So they know she was in contact with old friends that night by text and by a phone call. By 3 a.m., her car pulled out of the driveway and drove to the location where it was parked and ultimately found. And no one can be seen from the camera angles driving it One or two people, they don't know. Who was even behind the wheel? Was it even Susan? It's just too hard to say. Missy Morrissey was one of those people Susan was texting with the night before.
Now, she was a texter, and she was sometimes a late night texter, especially after school lets out, when she can kind of kick back and enjoy her evenings. She had gotten into a lot of conversations because her husband had gone to a movie with a friend that night. I know she was on Poshmark updating some of her stuff that she had there. She was talking to old friends. She was talking to former roommates. And then I texted her around midnight, and we texted until 12:29. And it was like any other night. Detective Grassi said that she left at 3:02 in the morning. Her car left, I should clarify. They can't make out who was driving or if there were multiple people in the car, but they can see her car clearly leave the driveway at 3:02 in the morning, make a left on Pennsylvania Avenue, heading north, make a right on Rising Sun Avenue, and drive. It's about a mile from her house to 1 Walker's Mill Road, where she parked. They believe she drove straight there because it only took her 2 minutes to get there. And there were cameras that caught her going from her house to Walker's Mill. Unfortunately, none of them sharp enough to make out, again, who was driving or how many people were in the car.
Also, the camera could only see Susan's car leaving her driveway. So what happened at Walker's Mill exactly, there was one camera at the mill. It captured headlights at 3:04 in the morning that turned off quickly. The car was seen pulling into the mill. The cameras were far away and could only make out headlights, not people, one or two in the car, nobody else inside, right? So the camera couldn't pick up anyone getting in or out, just the headlights turning on and then off. Detectives told me they believe Susan drove there to the mill intentionally. But why would she do that 3 in the morning? Not only the why, but the location of where Susan's vehicle was found would leave detectives just stumped. Here's Detective Grassi.
It's an accounting firm, but what's notable about that area is that building it's an old mill building, and across the river there's another old mill building. There's a dam there. It's a real scenic area, and people do go down there to go for walks and things like that. So I wouldn't get too keyed up on the business itself. I think it's more the general area. It's very scenic. The area where the vehicle was found, I wouldn't say it's desolate, but it's not very highly traveled.
So it's an area that anyone would know, or only a local where the car was found?
I would say only a local. You really have to know where you're going to find your way down there.
Are there a lot of transients in the area? I mean, I know that doesn't really add up to certain other reasons, but I wonder if it was a crime of opportunity, maybe?
Anything's possible. I wouldn't say it's a high transient area. I mean, there's people that hang out in the park just because it's a city park, and there's a lot of places to hide, for lack of a better term. You know, it's like heavy tree cover. You can camp out in there if you're homeless, but I wouldn't say it's like a homeless hotspot or anything like that.
Susan's last text messages were at 2:45 a.m. Her vehicle is found abandoned just a short ways away from her home. But no surveillance cameras picked her up, or anyone else for that matter. Exiting the vehicle, getting in the vehicle, nothing. Her body is found at 7:39 a.m. in the river. So were investigators looking at a suicide, a tragic accident, a homicide? Well, based on the investigation that was launched and forensics, it was slowly starting to look more like a murder. And that's also what the medical examiner ended up ruling. Susan's official cause of death was blunt force trauma and drowning. Susan's car was last seen on video at 3:04 in the morning. it started raining very hard, torrential downpour 50 minutes later, and her car was found with the windshield wipers on, which would indicate somebody sitting in the car for a while, turning them on, or getting out of the car, and then getting back in and leaving the windshield wipers on during the time. So how long was she in her car before someone killed her? There doesn't seem to be any kind of evidence pointing towards a struggle inside the car. The car was somewhat clean. Her body was found 3 miles down the river from where her car was. So for most of that stretch of land, the river is very shallow and rocky. Susan's siblings spoke with her husband, Ben, who was out with a friend that night.
What Ben said to me was that he got home from the movie with his friend, that his friend stayed at the house for a little bit. I think just on the porch, though, maybe 20 minutes. And then he left. Ben was there with Susan, and they shared a half a bottle of wine. And then they each took their respective sleep aids. Him as Lunesta, her Ambien. And they went to bed. But then he said that in the morning he woke up and there was a broken wine glass on the porch.
After the family conducted their own mock investigation, if you will, Missy and her family, well, they tried to retrace Susan's last moments to see how it was even possible to end up in the river in that specific location with all of the obstructions and the shallow water. Even if she was impaired by, say, that sleeping pill or wine, it was too difficult to get down to the water's edge. Now, interesting to me to note this is how the night played out, according to Susan's husband, Ben. How he told her siblings they had wine that night. Once he got home with going out with his friends, they stayed up for a bit. Then they both took sleeping pills and went to bed. The toxicology reports, it shows something very different. Listen to this.
And what about the toxicology? We know there's wine, of course.
Yeah.
Ambien.
There was no Ambien.
But I thought Ben said that they both took their respective sleeping pills and off to bed.
There was no Ambien. So that was a big surprise to us. Based on what we were told, we know that there was alcohol. We know that there were no illegal drugs. There was no Ambien. Detective Grassi told us that there was no Ambien.
That's a pretty significant piece of information.
It seemed so to us.
Yeah.
I mean, it honestly, what it was for us mostly was just it was shocking because we were basing all of what we thought happened on the fact that she had taken Ambien. I can't tell you how many people called me, messaged me, how many people sent me links to articles that sourced Ambien sleepwalking, Ambien sleep driving, sleep eating, people I've known all my life telling me experiences after having taken Ambien. It almost seemed like there was no limit to the craziness that could happen on Ambien. So it allowed us to look at a scenario that would have seemed impossible to comprehend an accident happening there in that way. I mean, Ambien kind of gave it license. And then to find out that there wasn't any just really shook us.
With the shocking new information that Ambien did not play a factor in Susan's death, the family had to look at alternative theories and scenarios, right? Did Susan leave her home to meet somebody in the middle of the night? Her sisters say she was not a secretive person. She wasn't the kind who would have a shady kind of meetup in the middle of the night. And If she was seeing someone, let's say, if she was, she would have told one of her close friends. She had a lot of close girlfriends. Also, there's zero evidence of tracing communications records whatsoever with anyone on any platform, whether it be social media or her cell phone usage, that data. Susan was not making plans to meet up with anyone else, especially that night. Detectives also checked Susan and Ben's home, and they told me nothing at all was found in the house that indicated any kind of struggle or incident. So that appears that she left at 3 a.m. willingly. But again, there's no way to say 100% and confirm with certainty that she was the person in the car and that she was driving alone. There just isn't. So the family does have a key piece of evidence. Susan was wearing a wrist fitness tracker.
That was what told us that her heart rate was, but this is one of those things that I have a hard time with still, that her heart rate stopped at 7 a.m. She was alive another 4 hours after she went to Walker's Mill. That was shocking. Because then you'd have to go back into her head, into the situation, and wonder what she was doing, what was happening.
And so they're still analyzing the data, but, based on what we know, before it's all analyzed, there was activity. There's steps and a heart rate. So part of the analysis, of course, will be, well, could those steps be just movement in the current of the river? And if the steps were minimal, if she only recorded 100 steps in those 4 hours, then I would say, yeah, it's possible that it was just, kind of movement through the river. But there were enough steps that it seems to me that movement in the river can't account for that. Observation, I suppose, of her body was that she wasn't in the water for very long, maybe 30 minutes at the most.
4 hours between when she was seen on video pulling into the mill to when her heart stopped. What was going on during those 4 hours? We've been told that there were no signs of a sexual assault, and Susan was still wearing the purple tank top that her husband Ben said she had on the night before when he last saw her. Because of a fitness tracker, the family and police feel that they know the exact moment that Susan's life was taken. So, what happened in those 4 hours? What happened between 3 a.m. when she left and 7 a.m. out at the mill? If her fitness tracker indicates her heart stopped at 7 a.m. and the 911 call comes in from that construction worker witness at 7:39 a.m., does that mean her killer was there and fled the scene within those 39 minutes?
My friend Becky and I did a 6:30 a.m. stakeout down there in some spots where she could have been put into the river. Because if you think about it, her heart stopped at 7. There's a very good chance that whatever happened during the daylight.
Yeah, what time did the sun come up?
5:54, something like that. There are a whole lot of people. There are parks along there. There was the potential. There's a stretch in the beginning where it would be hard to be seen, maybe a little bit harder. But there's some condos that overlook the creek. There's the potential for somebody to have seen something. So we went down and wanted to see what cameras might be available, who was out and about, what businesses were open at that hour.
The haunting question is, why did she leave? Did she go to meet someone, or did she just want to leave the house and just go anywhere? And that anywhere location by the mill happened to be the wrong place, wrong time. Those encounters do happen. Those crimes of opportunity happen. If Susan didn't text or call or message anyone to meet her at Walker's Mill, and Ben said she took Ambien, but there was no Ambien in her system, where does that leave her husband, Ben Ledyard, with Detective Grossi and her family?
But I would never say that someone's been ruled out, because you can never say never about anything.
My thoughts have changed over the course of the investigation. In the beginning, I thought it was an accident. Then they told us it was a homicide, and I trusted that it was a homicide. I had an incredibly difficult time imagining who on earth would want to kill her.
The two best times I ever had in my life were with her. And I'm lucky that I got a chance to tell her that. We went to Mexico for Christmas 2 Christmases ago, and we were out to dinner, and we were sitting across from each other at the table, and I was telling her. So I'm glad that we had that time. You know what I think probably the most? I miss her laugh. Susan loved to laugh, and she was the sort that would laugh and launch forward and flap her leg. I just miss her so much. And I say that because I have a hard time getting angry about it. I'm just so heartbroken and so baffled that I feel like I can't get angry while I'm still so grief-stricken and still so baffled. I can get angry if anybody ever said anything disparaging about her, which, how could they? But if anybody did, I'd hit the ceiling. So it's not that I can't feel anger. It's just, it's very hard for me to be angry at somebody who did this, because I feel it feels like a little out of body. But I would say, you took such an amazing person. I miss texting with her. I miss her wit. I miss so many things about her. I miss her voice. She was just so fun to talk to.
Love the J-I-N-G-L-E. Call me. We're on the road to the Eagles game. I'll try calling John too. Merry Christmas.
During the investigation, Ben Ledyard did go public, doing a press conference with police, asking for help from the public in finding his wife's killer. And again, detectives say he has fully cooperated with the investigation. Since then, there's been a very interesting development. Susan's husband, Ben, is now in jail, not for Susan's murder, but for a violent assault on his new third wife. Ben Ledyard was sentenced to 2 years in prison for brutally attacking his third wife, despite the wife's plea for him to receive only probation. Now, according to reports coming out of this case, the assault left his wife with severe injuries, including a wound so deep it exposed portions of her skull. The Superior Court judge sentenced Ledyard to 2 years in prison, taking into account a history of violent behavior towards his wife, which had previously resulted in multiple hospital visits. Now, perhaps this was an abused woman in a horrible situation who just kept taking it until her injuries were too severe, and then she needed to call for help on this particular attack. Who knows? But if he's capable of violently attacking his wife, it makes you wonder, what could have happened with Susan? Ben did say they were drinking that night. Ben Ledyard admitted in court to an alcohol-fueled violent attack on his current wife and expressed deep remorse. But the judge, she was so disturbed by the photos of the attack, she wasn't buying his plea for forgiveness. Is this violent behavior truly a pattern in his life? It doesn't mean he's a killer, but it certainly, makes you take pause, being that Susan's murder case has now gone cold. What happened that night? for Susan to just up and leave the house at 3 o'clock in the morning. If Ben, once he's out of jail, really wanted to end all of the speculation around him once and for all, he could simply just take a lie detector test with a lawyer present. Again, he's not a person of interest in this murder case of his ex-wife whatsoever. But police, they do need a tip. They need information. No piece of information is too small. The family has also incentivized people with a generous reward for information leading to the arrest. This is such a proactive family. They are committed to finding answers, getting the justice they need and deserve. And I hope they can get it. And I want to thank the family. Susan's life story was incredible, and thank you for allowing me to share it. Hopefully I'll see you next week.